So just want to make sure that it goes live because it seems like we are reaching the capacity for the number of participants. All right, so we are live on YouTube. 1 second. All right, I'll just mute it. Okay, very good to see you, professors. Do we have any more professors in the audience? If we do, please raise your hand because it's too many names for me to go quickly through all of them. And then also, very good. So let's promote a couple more. Yeah. So let me start the recording for those who cannot attend. So we are 2 days away from starting the 2022B round of XCulture. So the second semester, the late track. And so we expect quite a few students as well as quite a few non-student participants. And so we wanted to take this time, this day, this session to talk a little bit about what to expect, what happens next, and see if students have any questions so that we can answer them and students are fully prepared for the new round. For the students, just to make sure that you can hear us, can you please type the name of your country in the Q&A window or in the chat window below your screen? So this way we will know the geography. And while we're doing that, I want to ask the professors, thank you so much for joining us here, to unmute your microphones and just introduce yourselves, tell us where you are, what university you come from. So this way we will know who will be sharing their experience. Toshiya Ozaki is #1 on my screen, so maybe if he can go ahead and introduce himself.
Hi, boss. Hi, everybody. Nice meeting with you. I'm Toshiya Ozaki. I'm a professor at Rikyo University, Tokyo, Japan. I really look forward to working with all of you.
And what's remarkable about Professor Ozaki, he participated in the very, very first XCulture round in 2010. So that's almost 11 years ago. Yes, so still participating together. Thank you. James, you go next on my screen. Can you introduce yourself quickly?
All right, yeah. My name is James Rajasekar. I am from, currently I am working in Oman for a university called Sultan Qaboos University. I am associated with XCulture for about 8 years.
Yes.
But I'm also in the XCulture advisory board.
Right, yes. Yeah. Lydia, I'm not sure again in which order you see each other on your screens, but on my screen, Lydia is next. So we'll go, and then Sharon. And I think your microphone is muted, Lydia. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia. Nice to meet you all. I come from Indonesia International Institute for Life Science. I come from Jakarta, Indonesia. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Sharon?
Hi, I'm Sharon Sivecott from Coventry University in the UK, and I've been participating with a team in XCulture for the last few years. And this year we've got our biggest cohort of students entering XCulture.
Yeah, nice to see you. And I'm not sure, Seema and Ram, do you have microphones? We don't see your pictures. Can you maybe do quick introductions?
Yeah, hi, this is Seema Paceris. I'm from Florida International University. Good morning for me, sorry, everyone. Yes, and this is my first time with XCulture, so really looking forward to learning about the process and to being part of the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Ram, I'm not sure if you have your microphone, if you can talk. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Ram Subramanian, also from Florida, but from Stetson University. So good morning to all of you. This is my second year at XCulture.
Good to see you. And again, if there are more professors in the audience, please raise your hand at some point. We will add you to the panel. I'll start with a quick technical overview of what happens in the next few days so that both professors and students know. Then hopefully our professors here on the panel will be able to say a few words, share their experience. And then students, if you have any questions, you can ask them at any time, either put them in the Q&A or also raise your hand. We will add you to the panel so we can talk. And looking at the students, so it looks like we exceeded our capacity. So I assume most of them will be watching now on YouTube, but we have students from India, Nepal, the United States, Oman, Canada, Brazil, Philippines, Georgia, America, I assume the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, California, again, so sounds a little separatist, but yes, good to see you, Californians. For them, that's like 6 a.m. So yeah, thank you so much for waking up, Jessica. Jamaica, Italy, Finland, So again, the United States. So we have quite a few countries, and I'm very happy to see that we have almost every possible, all continents and every possible Kenya, so Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, very nice. So almost everybody comes from somewhere else. Anyway, here is the plan for the next few days. So as of today, we expect to have approximately 6,000 students in the XCulture this semester. Of those 6,000 students, almost 8,000, so almost 2,000 are in so-called early track. So they started a few weeks ago, and they are now right in the middle of the project. They still have a few weeks to go. So they will be done in a few weeks. So they go as a separate cohort within this semester because their semester started earlier, and for some of them it ends in a few weeks. Now the second bigger track will have about 4,000 people, probably a little bit more, and they will be sort of three categories. So the first and foremost, the biggest one will be the university students. So we have a total of 187 universities in XCulture this semester. That's the biggest one we've ever had, of which 130 universities are in the late track. And so those students already, most of them passed the readiness test. We still have a few students who are still working on the test. And we expect 3 or 4 universities joining a week later. So we have a German university, one from Finland. I may be missing a couple, but their semester starts a little late. So they sort of, made special arrangements. We will tentatively place those students on teams, but they will join a few days later. And so that's the biggest group. About half of them are MBA, master's, executive MBA, and other master's students. And the other half, more like 60%, are undergraduate students, so bachelors or whatever they're called in their countries. So they are our main core group. But we have 2 other pretty big groups this semester. So we have the so-called professionals, non-student adults, and the pre-college teens. As some of you may know, we have opened XCulture to non-student participants for a few years now, actually. We had 1,300 applications from 104 countries to begin with into those non-student tracks. Unlike the university students who are in courses with their professors who provide training and provide oversight, the students in the sort of non-university track, they come not necessarily unprepared, but they are not in a formal course. And for that reason, we want to make sure that they're fully prepared. So what we do is we ask them to take 4 weeks of theoretical training. So each week they have a series of training modules that they have to complete, and then they have to complete a test. So there are a total of 4 theory tests. And only those of them who have completed all 4 tests are allowed to be placed on teams. And so of those students, about half were lost. So some of them never showed up, not many, but there were a few. And then some did try the test, but didn't quite, were not able to pass all 4. And our logic was that if you're not quite ready, maybe you should try next semester instead. So, but there will be several hundred of those professionals. So people who are, people in their 20s and 30s and older ones, but are not at a university at this time. And so they had to apply individually. And then about 200-300 teenagers, usually 16, 17-year-olds, sometimes 15. So who are getting ready for the college. Now, all 3 tracks will be separate, or all 3 groups will be separate. So the university students will be with university students in teams. The teenagers will be with teenagers of the same age, plus or minus 1 year, and professionals will be with professionals. Now, on Monday, we will be forming teams. And so usually it takes 4 to 5 hours to go from the list of names to fully form teams, to sending out the team assignments to each student. The constraints here are that, one, we would like to keep students of different age and skill level sort of separate in separate teams. So we not only try to keep the teenagers, keep the teenagers separately and professionals separately, but we also try to keep master students on teams with other master students, executive MBAs. We have a few of those with other executive MBAs, undergraduate students with undergraduate students, also when possible matched more or less by age and experience. I will be honest with you, we've done a lot of studies, and it doesn't look like, for example, MBA students do a much better job than undergraduate students. But what we know is that when we mix them in teams, usually there is some tension. The older MBA students believe that they have been placed on teams with less prepared undergraduate students and sometimes feel like they have to do babysitting. And then the other way around, the younger students feel that the older students are more, sort of dominant, bossy, don't listen to them. So we try to match them more or less at the, by the level of experience and age. Also, we recognize that the older students, those are in the, who are in the 30s or 40s, they maybe have families, have jobs, and perhaps have a different sort of schedule and life demands than the younger 19, 20-year-old undergraduate students. So we try to match them by the level of experience, but other than that, we try to maximize the cultural diversity. And so in the early track, I'm very happy to say that we had teams usually of 6, sometimes of 7 students, where pretty much everybody was from somewhere else. We had a few teams that had 2 students from the United States, but from different states. And I think we had a few teams that had 2 students from, I believe it was from Colombia, but again, usually from different cities. But usually it was 6 students, 5 countries, or 7 students, 6 countries. And even if there were 2 students from the same country, it would be from very different parts of the country, hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers apart. We will see what it will look like in the late track. We have, as always, quite a few American students or US-based students. But again, a good portion of the American students are international students or students in the US or from somewhere else. Plus this semester, quite a few students who study at American universities, they actually study from a distance. So they basically stay in their respective countries and take courses online because of the COVID-19. So we'll see how it goes. But yes, the expectation is that each team will have probably 6 people to begin with. And then if asked for more, some teams may be getting an additional team member a week later to the size of 7. There is sometimes that a student drops the course and so the team may lose somebody. So some teams may end up with about 5 people and they say, we are happy, everybody likes each other, we don't need more people. So the teams will be on average 6 people per team, but some will have 7, some will have 5, and maybe even some will have 8. Sometimes students keep asking for additional team members. And if we have some latecomers, we try to accommodate. So we'll see how it goes. So you will get your team assignments on Monday. And as I said, it will probably be towards the end of the day. So the truth is that even though the deadline to complete the test is tomorrow, there will be still quite a few students trying to get it done on Monday. And so every time we go online, we see that another 10, 20, 30 students complete the test every hour. And so for that reason, we always wait, okay, well, let's give it another hour just to make sure that everyone's on. And so usually we start forming teams around noontime, the US EST, so my time, Florida, New York, so that time zone. But by the time we are done, it will be more like 5, 6 p.m. So for many countries in Europe, in Africa, Australia, Asia, for you, it will be late at night. But in any case, you will get your team assignments on Monday, and it will be an email where you will get basically the names and email addresses of your team, and obviously your team only. So we will not share all several thousand names with anyone, obviously. Only the 5, 6 names on your team will be the ones that you will receive. And from that point on, you're basically ready to go. So the first step will be to connect with your team. And since to begin, you only have the email address, so the students will be sending the emails to each other, I assume, saying, hi, my name is John, I'm from the United Kingdom or from Canada. And then, hi, my name is whatever the other team members are. But then once you are on the team and once you've established that initial contact, the teams are free to communicate using any methods you want. And so we obviously provided you some training in WhatsApp, Google Docs, Dropbox, Skype, Zoom. So you can use any or every or none of those tools. Historically, most of the teams will form a group in either Facebook or on WhatsApp. And so do most of the communication there, but then also use like Dropbox or Google Docs for co-editing the documents. Many teams try project management software such as Slack or Trello or Basecamp. Not a huge percentage, but about 20% of the teams try that as well. But then we always have some teams that rely only on email, and so keep sending email and attachments with the file that they're working on. Not a problem. I mean, you probably will end up with 20 conflicting copies of the file, but whatever works for you, works for you. Among the conflicts that we see in this area is that sometimes there will be a team member in whose country the medium of choice, the communication tool is not working. Like, for example, we have some students from China this time, and in China, usually Google services and Facebook are not working. And so that creates a problem with, if the team wants to use, for example, WhatsApp or Facebook groups, the Chinese team member can use some sort of a proxy and, still get online, but usually it's not as reliable and not as fast. And so unfortunately, there is really not much that can be done in that case. We have sometimes, and it was the case last year, so when the trade war between the US and China started, so the teams that have Chinese team members, they say, okay, let's use, for example, WeChat instead, or QQ, so the Chinese communication tools. But for some reason, last semester, they were not downloading in the United States. So if you had a WeChat on your phone, the app already, you could connect with your Chinese team members. But if you didn't, you couldn't add it for some reason. And I tried on my phone as well. It didn't work. So I'm not sure what the situation is today, but it's possible there will be a problem of that kind for some countries. We have some Middle Eastern countries that ban some of the services. Last semester, we also had students, a lot of students actually from Venezuela. And so with them, it was not a problem with the app. The problem was that they had power outages and were not able to go online altogether. So that was a challenge. There is always somebody on the team who refuses to install, for example, Facebook. And usually that student is from the United States for some reason. So there are some people who just, refuse to use social media. But the point here is that it's all good. I mean, the whole point of this project is to put students in a situation where you experience these kinds of challenges. And so if you have someone who is not able to use, for example, Facebook or WhatsApp, well, find another tool. If there is someone who doesn't want to use those tools, again, find a solution. So that's a challenge. It's a very typical challenge, just like the time zones or cultural differences that, tools are not available in all countries. And so that's a good experience. And usually the teams find a solution, so no problem. But yeah, once you have that, once you decided how you want to communicate, there are a couple more things that the teams sort of need to do. One, you don't have to, but you can select a team leader. So meaning that it may be a good idea to have sort of a coordinator. It doesn't necessarily mean that this person will be the boss on the team, but it's not a bad idea to have someone who will do most of the coordination. And so if you want to have a formal election for that, great. If you want to just have a discussion and then decide informally, that's fine too. Likewise, we strongly recommend that you spend some time and write up what we call a team contract or a team charter. And again, you have a little kind of guide on how to do it in your instructions. And so again, we've done it in a few semesters when we didn't ask for the team charter, and in a few when we did have it. And so the teams that do have a team charter perform much better. In fact, we have a paper now under review at a journal, Academy of Management, Learning and Education. So where we specifically reported the findings. And so when the team had a team charter, when the team sat down and discussed who will be doing what will be the schedule, how will the workload be distributed, how the conflicts will be resolved, even if it was only a few hours or maybe, a few minute discussion and then maybe a few emails, but they wrote down something like a few lines, there is a huge improvement in all kinds of things. Fewer conflicts, more satisfaction, faster performance, better quality of work. So I strongly recommend that you take this time in the first week or second week and have some discussions as to how you're going to work on these things together. Again, it's sort of optional. Yes, go ahead, Maria.
Vasil, I would like to ask, team charter, is the same like a social contract? As sometimes it's different wording, but it's something about that.
Actually, we had two studies last year, one on social contract and one on team contract. The idea is the same, but the social contract, that's more kind of, presumptive agreement, meaning that it's not on paper. It's more, we work together, over time we develop some sort of a, relationship. And I feel that I'm obliged to my team to perform my duties on time and well. So,
but in Europe, we write social contract on the paper, on the walls. So
yes, for this study, we had Bonnie O'Neill is the professor who was doing that study. So they specifically had a few questions for students who participated last semester, where they were asking, do you feel like you have to? Do you feel like you're obliged, to? So it was more kind of in your head. Whereas the team charter, that's the actual written document. But yes, maybe in some countries they call that document a social contract. And if so, yes, that's the case. Yes, it is not a legal contract. It's not like if you miss the deadline, somebody will sue you. So it's more like a social agreement, between the people. But yes, that's the idea. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, once you have all of that, the rest is.
James wanted to add.
Yeah, go ahead, James. Yes, maybe you have something.
Unmute yourself, James, please.
My students are emailing me right now that they cannot log in because the system says it reached maximum 100.
Yes, and actually, let me do one thing here. So yeah, we reached the maximum, and I'm not able, and I have quite a few as well. Let me just send the link. Just 1 second. Please share the link with all students. So I'll send it to my assistant, who doesn't seem to be here either. But we are also streaming on YouTube. And so all you need to do is just go to YouTube, or if you can email your students here, go to YouTube, type in XCulture, the XCulture video channel will pop up. And so the whole meeting is going on YouTube as well. People can watch live. And obviously we have a recording, so we will share that as well once the meeting is over. The problem here,
I have tried.
Yeah.
I have tried on YouTube, but I didn't find this live.
It's going on my layer. So let me show you share. So if you go to YouTube, let me just make sure that it's working. So that's us on YouTube.
I use that link as well, but for me,
so it seems like in my YouTube, we are here. So if I wave my hand, the picture will be there with a delay of like 30 seconds. So should be there any minute now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, let's continue. But yes, for professors, again, you know, how such a serious organization as XCulture doesn't allow more people to be in the Zoom. The truth is that normally our limit of 100 is sufficient, and we hardly ever have more students for the webinars and things like that. But the next step would be, I believe they do 500, and it's like $700 per year. So it becomes kind of expensive. And given that we have a very limited budget and we need more than 100 only like once a year, so we decided not to upgrade. So and last time we tried to upgrade for a week, it was such a mess that it's just, you know, so we have an annual subscription. So what we do is we record the meetings, we stream them on YouTube if needed, but unfortunately, or I guess we made a calculated choice that we probably don't want to have a permanent account with more than 100 participants. Although again, it seems like we exceeded the capacity again, maybe we should look into that again. So once teams are formed, once contact is established, from that point on, there will be sort of like a weekly cycle. So every week, usually on Wednesday, you will receive an email with the link to your next week's what we call progress survey. And all you have to do is do what's in the instructions. So you just complete the project as the instructions tell you to do so, and then click on that weekly progress survey link and report if everything's going well for you this week. So in the weekly progress surveys, there will be a window or area where we will ask you to submit your work. Like for example, if this week you're working on the draft of report section 1 or report section 2, we will ask you to attach that document so that we can check if you're making progress. It's not graded. It's not something that, you know, if it's not too much or if it's not too good yet, nobody's going to penalize you. It's more for us to see where students stand, to be able to provide some feedback, to be able to help students maybe or teams that are struggling. And we do have coaches who can help with that. But other than that, so it's more for you to keep you on track. In the past, we didn't ask for those weekly submissions. And what happens is many teams just wait and then try to get everything done on the last day. And obviously by that time it's too late. And so by asking you to submit your work every week, we noticed that the teams kind of are more proactive, work, start early. And then in the end, everybody is happier, the work is better, and the teams actually enjoy the process much more. So yeah, that's it. And so there will be peer evaluations in the weekly surveys. And so all you have to do there is to basically evaluate performance of each of your team members. Now, the very important thing is that we do look at those very carefully. And if they are too low, if they are below 2.0 in the first week, if your team evaluated you, and let's say 6 team members, so 5 people evaluate your work. If your average peer evaluations across all of those 5 people and whatever dimensions we use for peer evaluations are below 2.0, that tells us that there is a problem. That tells us that the team is not happy with you at all. And so what will happen is we will send you an email, sort of warn you so you know that your peer evaluations are low. We will offer you coaching. So we will offer you help from one of our international coaches. And so if needed, they will maybe talk to you, explain if you're lost, if you don't know what you need to do, if you don't know how to approach your team, how to kind of reconcile with them, the coach will be able to help you if you need that help. And we have here Carlos, I see his hand. So he's from the coaching program. Maybe he will say a couple of words, what kind of help you can get from them. But if the situation does not improve by the next week, we will move those students we will remove them from the teams, and we will put them on one-person teams. Now, this message is for professors. So the reason we don't exclude students from the teams altogether, but rather put them on one-person teams, is because for you professors, if a student gets kicked out from the project altogether, that's a problem. You have to give that student some different assignment. So we allow them to stay in the project, complete the same project with the same deadlines, the same clients, the same everything, just individually. Now, I will be honest with you that almost always, so we, on a given week, we will have probably about 8 people who get, or maybe 10 people who get a warning, and then later on, maybe another 5 people, 6 people who get excluded from the teams out of many thousands. So that's like not even 1%, but it's like 0.1% who get, who get warned and then excluded. But almost all of them eventually will reconcile with their teams and will email us, both the team and the student, and say, we are good. I spoke with my team. They like me again. And so they want me back on the team. And so we reach out to the team and they say, yeah, he talked to us. He was busy, or he forgot, but now he's good. Yeah, please put that student back on the team. So there will be probably about 50 students that we will exclude over the entire project. But probably about 30 or 40 of them will be placed back on teams right away, because they will then say, oh, I need to work harder. So usually it will be fine. Those who will be fully excluded, permanently excluded, in most of the cases, they either drop the course or sometimes don't care at all. Like, we try to reach them, they never reply. So they come back like literally one day before the deadline and say, oh, I didn't realize I was not on the team anymore. And we're like, well, what can we do? So, but other than that, it should be fine. And the vast majority of the students do well. In the early track, the average peer evaluations last week were 4.2. So, which is better than good, not perfect, excellent, but better than good. And so usually that's what we see. So usually students are doing pretty well. Only a very, very small percentage are struggling, but I guess that's expected in any team. And that's the idea. So that's basically all we do. Let me show you also the resource page in case you missed it, so you know what it looks like. But other than that, we will open the room for questions and answers. And then also maybe professors will share some experiences of their own and some tips. So the resource page is 2B, so 2020 2B. And this is where you will find everything you need for the project. So you will find some training materials, and I assume most of you have gone through them by now. You will find, importantly, the webinar schedule. So there is a file with all of the webinars that have happened with the recordings and that are still to happen. Like, for example, today's one was right here, and you have the link and you can join it. So we'll have a few more webinars. And so there will be one, for example, next week that we organized not as part of our main webinar schedule, but in addition. So in the United States, there are several organizations that help American companies export and foreign companies import into the United States. And so we invited 3 of those agencies. So there will be 3 speakers from 3 different agencies in the United States who will provide overview of what kind of resources they provide, but more importantly, what you need to know if you would like to import into the United States or export from the United States. And because some of our clients are American companies, many foreign clients, the students will be recommending to import into the United States. We thought it would be a helpful webinar. So anything like this, it's here on the list. Likewise, you see the list of webinars with the companies that participate in the project this semester. Again, we've had already about a dozen webinars, and if they happened, you will be able to find the recordings here. There will be a next round of webinars in the coming weeks so that you can meet the company CEOs on your own. All of the links will be here. And then we also had a few good webinars last semester in the early track where the topics were kind of universal. Like, for example, international entry modes, international marketing, how to do competition analysis, a webinar on plagiarism, citation styles. So we may not be able to do them with professors every semester, but we do have the recordings from the previous semester, so you can watch them here. Now, if we go back to the resource page, again, here you will also find the schedule. You will find the link to each of the company instructions. So if you go here, that's the schedule for the late track. And so that's the universal schedule. The actual task is slightly different for each team. So what goes into report section 1 for some of the companies may be different for others, but other than that, the schedule is exactly the same. You have the turn it in instructions. So the final report will be submitted by turn it in. And so that's the class ID and the password. And so we have a total of, I believe, 12 companies already listed here. And there are 2 more that I will add today. So there is also a company that makes mineral water out of Lithuania. And there is also a company from France that makes beer. And so we decided to add those 2 companies, kind of food and drinks, so that you, if you want to work on a challenge from that industry, you will have that option as well. But yes, for each of the companies, you have the instructions. So when you click on this file, you will see a PDF file with a description of the company. So you will have a few pages like this one is a company from Ghana. They make chocolate. And so here you have all kinds of information and links to the company pages, but then history of the company, products of the company, some photos, how they make the product. So, and then you have a list of questions that they need your help with. And so we also have some recordings of the meetings with the company CEO and founder, but also some other videos about the company that you can watch. And so they wanted your help with market research. So some research of the competition. And then they wanted your ideas for where, in which new country they can sell their chocolates. And then obviously help with the marketing strategy for this country. And then with the management, like, entry mode, distribution channels, pricing strategy, logistics, shipping, trade regulations, certification, things like that. And so it's a similar thing for each of the companies. Now, importantly, we get a lot of questions, like literally dozens of questions every day from the students about different aspects of the challenge. And most of those questions are repetitive. So most of the questions we see are the questions that we've seen in the past. So what we do is we create this file that we call frequently asked questions. And when a new question comes along, we just add them to this catalog. So when you have a question, you can always go into this file and see what was asked before and see what kind of answers were provided. And then when your question is a new one, if it's something that we haven't seen before, we will reach out to the company, we will get the answer, but then we will add it to this catalog. And so this way you will be able to see the records of those old questions so that we don't have to sort of, bother the CEO each time with the same question again and again and again. And so you just look at the list of the companies, you look at the instructions. In the instructions, you will see the description of the company. You can look at the webinars and see the recordings. And for most of these companies, we already had at least one webinar. So you can see the recording where the company introduced the company. And there will be, as I said, another round. So there will be another live webinar with each of those companies. So you will be able to meet the CEOs if you need to. And yeah, basically that's what you go with. And there are some resources for the professors, but if students want to learn more, want to see, for example, the instructor's handbook, they can. So that's an option as well. You have it all here. We are open so that the students have a full picture. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask the professors, as well as I see we have people here from the coaching program, anything that you would like to add, any ideas, any suggestions, any tips. Maybe let's go quickly with Carlos Cordona of the coaching program. Carlos, can you tell us a little bit more about the coaching program and what kind of help you guys provide? How many coaches you have? Because I don't even know how many you have this semester, 50, 70? So
yes,
tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, this semester we actually have about 70 coaches and we have about 30 senior coaches. So it's about 100 in total. And for the most part, we've been pretty proactive to ensure that the semester is running pretty smooth. So as some of you guys from early track, those that have already participated and will be ending soon in their semester, we have been responding to them for a coaching request or any questions that they have asked us very proactively, very fast. So generally it's about 24 hours to 48 hours before they receive a response whenever they're asking for information or assistance regarding a specific problem that they're facing in the group. And this year we had a lot more in-depth training and we're providing more experience to our coaches to ensure that this semester everything's running a bit smoother, like I said. But what I want to mention as well is that we will have our coaching webinars from the 9th of October up to the 25th. So for some of you that are new students and this is your first time working in a global virtual team, it will be a great opportunity to be able to learn some of the tricks and tips as well as more information regarding different topics and just see how the presentations itself are being provided by our coaches and senior coaches. Since this semester, we're going to be more, I would say, interactive with our audience. So the coaching webinars will be more intensive, as well as probably more fun for some of you guys. So we
So
encourage.
can you share with us what topics you're planning to cover in the webinars? So that's a whole different set of webinars, more kind of training, right? So what are the topics that you're planning to cover this semester?
Well, so far, like some of the main ones that I would like to mention is that we will be talking about, for example, one of the webinars is how to work effectively with global virtual teams. Another webinar is international marketing, for those of you that might be interested on international trade as well. We will also talk about different types of regulations and problems that are facing nowadays, like I would say international companies coming into different countries and so on. So
Yeah.
we do have a list, and that list will probably be sent on Tuesday with the Qualtrics links and everything else. So you will be able to see it firsthand. And all the registrations, everything else will be set out so that everybody should be able to join the webinars or register for them beforehand before the 9th of October. So I think it should be pretty good.
And so students can come to coaches if they have a problem, if they have a conflict in the team, but also if they, for example, would like to get personal feedback on the work they do, right? So if they send you their work, you can assign a coach or two who can take a look and then maybe provide some quick feedback and suggestions for improving the work, right?
Yeah, so the way that it's set out this semester is we designated now our coaches through the XCulture system, and the system itself operates in a way that it is sent to whoever hasn't received a case at the moment. So everybody has at least received a couple cases by now. And when they receive that request specifically, they will go into the challenge of the company, and then they will provide feedback based on what the challenge mentions, and then based on what they have received from the students. So if they sent out, at least for this semester, for this period, the early track will be sending out their finalized products before they submit it, and then we will provide an in-depth analysis of that. Now, I think we're going to be a little bit overwhelmed with all the responses and all the different requests from students. This is like the pre-final weeks before they actually submit the final assignment. But for the most part, I think we're going to be fine, since we have such a big group of members, and then they're being pretty quick to read all the challenges and to respond effectively to our members.
Yeah, there is one thing, just let me on the feedback. There is one thing that is really cool this semester. We haven't done it ever before. So you can see my screen, the black screen or the white screen? Which one is it?
Black screen.
Black screen, okay. So we have one senior coach who has a team of, I think, about a dozen coaches. And what they did was they looked at the weekly submissions from the previous semester. And since most of the companies are still the same, and they provided feedback on what they saw last semester. Like, for example, Dart drones. So they looked at the submissions for the first report section, and they literally read them and provided very detailed feedback on essentially, typical problems, recommendations for fixing those problems, some interesting solutions. And so this is kind of generic feedback, but essentially it says, okay, now we read 200 submissions from the last semester for this company. And this is what we have to say about the problems we see in the submissions from the last semester. We have those ready for you, and we will share them with you literally once the project starts. And so this way, it may take too long to read your work and provide feedback on this semester's submissions, because it's 1,000 teams or so, and obviously it takes a week or two just to read and evaluate that work. But chances are students this semester will be making the same mistakes that the students made last semester. And so this way we will give you feedback on your work, so to speak, even before you wrote your work. So this way you can learn from the mistakes of the students who went before you. It will not work perfectly for some of the new companies, because we have a few companies that are participating the first time this time. But still, it would be pretty useful feedback to look at, because as I said, we see the same problems, the same mistakes over and over again. So we figured we might want to share feedback on those last semester submissions for this semester students, so you can learn from the mistakes of the previous cohort. Yeah, Maria, sorry, you had something to say, yeah?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it is the same form for students to send the request for help or for feedback or for any other coaching request. So it will be the same form for all students.
And we will have that link in every single weekly survey. So there will be always at the end, there will be a line saying that if you need coaching help, you can click here and request help, right? And they can specify there what kind of help they need, right? So if they need feedback or if they need conflict resolution, we don't get many conflicts, I guess, right? So can you guys tell us briefly what kind of questions you get so far mainly from the teams? Is it mainly requests for feedback or are there any like serious problems?
Well, at this point, we have been receiving mostly requests for feedback, as well as a couple so far cases that do require a bit more assistance from our senior coaches. But for the most part, it's just generally asking for help regarding a specific section that they're working on, or for somebody to be able to proofread or validate the assignment. They're still,
and that's what we want to see. So I guess conflicts sometimes do happen as well, and if they do, we will help with those as well. But yeah, it's kind of more technical, more work-related questions are sort of, you know, that's a good sign. So we have a few other professors here. Would you share your experience, your tips, maybe also for professors, not only for students? James, Toshia, Lydia, so you participated for a while. So what would be your experience and suggestions?
There was raised hand from Virimaya, I guess.
Yeah, so I'll add him as well. Yeah. So who wants to go first, professors?
Actually, I do want to ask a question because I'm new in here. Please. Yeah. Related to the team charter, is it also part of the weekly progress survey? You keep mentioning there will be a weekly progress survey to check on the performance of the students. So what's inside the progress survey? Can you show a bit to me? So
Yes,
I can get a feel of it.
So that's a very, very good question. So there will be a survey that students need to complete at the end of each week. And always the deadline is Sunday midnight. So basically end of the week. There will be 2 of those in the first week. So the very first progress survey will be due on Thursday of next week. And then on Sunday again. But then from that point on, it's only 1 week. And we added the 2 of them or 1 extra in the first week, just again to get students start working as soon as possible. But all they have to do in the first survey is just basically tell us if they've been able to communicate with their team members. So there is nothing else. They only say, yes, I've heard from this student and I've heard from this student, but not from that student. That's all they need to do. Then for the next one, all they need to do is select the company. So they look at the list of the companies and they say, so they basically need to give us only 1 word. So my company will be, let's say, I don't know, Kochi Grifoni or Dart Drones. And that's all they do. But then for the next week, we will ask them again, is everything fine? Get to know your team members. So essentially it will be, there are still no submissions that they need to do, but they will be telling us, if everything's going in the team. There will be a little quiz where we test how well the students know each other. Again, it's obviously not graded, but by adding those few questions, the hope is that we will prompt students to ask those questions of their team members. Like, for example, what is your hobby? Or do you have a job outside school? Or do you have a pet at home and things like that? So there are like 5 questions only. So it's a very simple quiz, but the hope is that the students will get to know each other a little bit better. And that's the week. So at the end of the second week, we also say, if you do have a team contract, can you please submit it so we can take a look at it? I will be honest, again, we don't really, we make them available to the professors and we encourage the professors to take a look at those team contracts, but we don't really have the resources and there is really no need to evaluate them. So it's not like we're going to read them and give a grade to the students. But in that week's assignment, there will be a little bit instructions on how to create a team charter. So basically what should be included in it. And again, we'd only ask, like discuss who will be doing what. Discuss your schedule, discuss your maybe a workload distribution, discuss if you're going to have a team leader, and if so, who will be this person and what this person's job will be. Discuss how you will handle conflicts or maybe lack of participation. So if somebody is not participating, what will your team do? And so again, it's very informal. So we leave it up to the teams to sort of decide how much they want to write. Most of the teams will have like a 1-page, like a quick summary. Some teams take it to an extreme, like some teams will have like a team contract, like with 25 pages, like very, very detailed. So we don't expect that, and probably it's not worth spending all that time. but there will be an option to submit it. And as I said, we primarily sort of try to prompt the students to have that discussion, but we do not, formally, require or read it and say, oh, your team charter is not detailed enough. And that's it. And then next week, they will only submit the draft of the first section, and then the draft of the next section, then the draft of the next section. And then a week before the final deadline, we allow them to submit the full draft to turn it in. And so what that does, it will check the work for plagiarism. And sometimes what happens is that one of the team members copies and pastes, part of the report, the section that the student is responsible for, and the rest of the team doesn't even know about it. So by submitting the draft a week early to turn it in and get in the full plagiarism report, the team sort of knows if there is a problem or not. And if there is a problem, it doesn't happen very often, but if there is a problem, they will have enough time to fix it. Maybe ask that student to rewrite the section of the report, or maybe the rest of the team will help the student to rewrite the report section. So they'll have a little extra time. And then finally, the final report will be due, I think it will be November 22nd, if I remember this year correctly. And that's basically it. So that's it.
And then how do you divide between the first section and second and the third section?
In each of the challenge instructions, let me show you very briefly here. There is a, the instructions are right here. So if we open, for example, Hiplantron, so that's a Colombian company that makes tea. Actually, I just realized we have several companies that make drinks. So we have a tea company, a mineral water company, a winery from Italy, a beer from France. So I didn't realize like 1/3 of all companies make different types of drinks. But anyway, so once they have read the description of the company, so they have this schedule here. So for this particular company, for the first section, they want market analysis, including industry and competition analysis, and new market selection and analysis of this market. For the report section 2, they want marketing. So they want promotion channels, main message, promotion materials, and things like that. And then for the third section, they want something related kind of to operations management, best entry mode, something on logistics, and something on pricing. And again, this list of questions may be slightly different for each company, but there will be always 3 sections. And we deliberately put it into 3 so that we can have that sort of, each week students have to do something. And so this way they don't have to wait until the last day and then frantically try to complete everything. All right, Toshia, you wanted to share your experience, I saw, and then we went into the questions. So what are you are very, very experienced. What would be your recommendations, both for professors, but also for students?
For students, I think some of Asian students are very quiet and English is not good. But I do hope that you students are accommodating. For example, I do remember that my students really didn't talk for the first couple of times meetings. So all the meetings were scheduled in Tokyo time around 3 or 4 a.m. And that really forced them to wake up and participate. And some of them basically started dropping out of the meetings, and this created a huge problems. Yeah. So I do hope that at least in the first couple of meetings, you invite them to speak, even if they are very slow and very quiet.
That's a very good point. And especially, again, the time zone differences, you're right. I mean, Japan is sort of way ahead in terms of the time. So by now it's basically midnight in your, or very late evening in your time zone, right? And so it may be always, hard to find a time that works for everybody. And since most of the students probably will be in Europe, Latin America, South America, North America. So it may be that, some of the students in those, like Singapore, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, may be not really excluded, but it may be a very inconvenient time for them to participate. Likewise, the students from California, often the meetings are too early for them. So the teams have to be, cognizant of that difference and be respectful and try to accommodate here. So that's a very good point. Any other comments? Teet also, I see here, joined us. So again, he participated for many years, and James obviously has participated for many years. Any words of wisdom for your colleagues or students?
Yes, I agree with Professor Ozaki. Every term, I also come across these 2 issues. One is the time difference issues. The other one is I try to communicate with my group but only two people responded, or one responded, or sometimes nobody responded. So invariably, we would, as faculty, instructors, we would come across this every term. But the only way is, I encourage in my students, this is a global project, right? So somewhere the time difference will be there. We are not working within a single country, so we will always have this issue. So when there is no choice, there's only one choice, only one way to go about it. So that was kind of resolved. But then, especially during the last term, when we all moved to online, sometimes, in some countries, we have this terrible internet connection, as Dr. Was pointed out. So patience, I told my students to be patient and, try to communicate with them. And again, another issue that would come up is the social media in some parts of the world, especially where I live in. So people don't use, they don't show their faces online. So that's also kind of, we might feel that could be an issue. So just I would encourage my students to stick to email. If they're not very comfortable, that's fine. But as I said earlier, I'm in this program for about 8 years, and most of the time we end up, at least my students end up in, winning teams. So they're doing really well. So initially there could be problems, but we can manage. Yes.
And as I always say to my students, XCulture is an exercise. It's not a test. So don't worry about, try to write a good report, but it's not so much about the final product. It's more about you as a team, as an international team, getting to that product. So the whole idea, like, time zone differences, yes, it is a problem, but that's the whole point. We want you to experience this. We want you to learn how to deal with them so that in the future, you don't, if you have to deal with, people from other countries, you know how to approach it. You know how to schedule a meeting, even though you are in different time zones, you know how to connect online. So that's an exercise. Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, Tim, please go ahead. Yes.
And also some questions. So my reflection is sometimes students claim, even my students, that they have done more work than other team members. And just 2 times I have said, okay, I shall email to other team members and ask about their reflection, why it's so, why they were not motivated. But then somehow it has cooled down, such claim. But still, maybe as you have some good idea how to really get it so if they really feel that somebody is not motivated, how they really could vote the person out, because it happens very, very, very seldom, and it's often afterwards. Such claims. And well, I have also such a remark. There was some confusion with this webinar, because I remember sometimes there are 1,000 members, but I tried to get in 5 times, and I got all the time today message that there is a limit of 100 persons. So I guess some of my students will be quite angry in the next class, because
my apology for that. And as I said, we do have a limit. So we have it's a paid version of this. So we paid, I don't know, a few $100s per year to have. I think we pay something like 45 plus. So it's about $65 a month. So we pay about 600 already. So for 100 students. And I think if we wanted to increase it to 500, it would be like double that or something like that. Probably we need to get the full subscription, but we do record the meeting. It will be available as a recording. So my apology that we exceeded the limit this time.
But if it would be recorded, it would be good to share.
Yeah, it is recorded.
Ask that why you
of course
just try to push us on Saturday to join this meeting. But then maybe a related question is, because really during COVID-19 we have made big progress in Zoom, in different webinars, face-to-face. What is your recommendation? What kind of new tools students should be using, what were not promoted in this readiness test maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the clients this semester is a company called Remo. and it's probably one of the newest players in this online communication, market. So they're kind of like Zoom, but they have some features that Zoom doesn't have. So we even have that. And they even gave us some free licenses that we can use and share with the students and professors if you want to try it.
So the name is Remo.
Remo, yeah. But I want to go back to Teet's original question that students sometimes say that they do all the work and the rest of the team doesn't do anything. It's such a typical problem that we literally wrote a couple of papers about it. And the problem is that it almost seems like our brain works in mysterious ways. And it seems like it refuses to perceive what it doesn't see. Meaning that when we all work in the same room and we see each other all the time, so we know who is doing what. But when we work in a virtual team, if I don't see my people do the work, I usually assume that they are not working hard. And so there is one statistic that I want to share with you that is sort of almost to the point that it's funny. So in the peer evaluations, there is one question that asks, of all the work that you did last week as a team, what percentage was done by each of the team members? And so you literally see the list of team members. Let's say you have 7 people on the team, and you have to attribute the percentages to different team members. And one of those names is yours. So if you have 7 people, on average, it would be what, like 15, 16% per person, right? And so in the perfect world, you would give everyone like 16% or 15%, maybe a little bit more to some, a little bit less to others. And so when we add up peer evaluations, so when we add up what people think others did, on average, we get about 90% or something like that. So obviously people think that they do a little bit more. But if we add up all self-evaluations, so like what this person said, this person did, and then what next person said, the person did, we get, do you know what percentage we get? So if we add self-evaluations, what people think they do individually, like ideally it should add up to 100, obviously, right? But in reality, it gets about 230%. So which means that people on average, like everybody out of the thousands, on average overestimate their own contribution by a factor of about 2.3. So which means that even if everything goes well, I mean, mathematically it should be about 100. But even when everything is going well, people always think that I do twice as much as any given team member on my team. And that's the problem, because everybody thinks that I'm doing all the work and they don't do anything. And so how do you deal with that? I mean, there is really, I still haven't found a solution. So my point here is that every time a student comes to me and says, I'm doing more work than my team members, can you help? I always go to those peer evaluations and I look at what other peers tell me. And it seems like everybody on the team thinks that they do all the work and everybody else is not doing the work. So this is one of these challenges of working in teams in general, but especially in virtual teams. And I think for the students, that's just a lesson for you. Like, this is just how people are. And if you think you do all the work, I mean, I can almost guarantee that the rest of the team thinks that you're not doing enough and they do all the work. So it is just, psychology of being on a team. So that's a problem.
Maybe one practical hint is because in my classes, students defend their reports in the last class. And
Yeah.
they write also some small reflection, what was their role and so. And then when I start asking questions about all other sections of report, then soon I can find if really they covered so many sections individually.
Right.
Or if they can't answer, it's clear that some other students even maybe did more.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's a problem. Many teams, what they do is they divide up the workload by report section.
Yeah, and that's not a good idea to do it. So yeah, there should be more synergy.
The challenge there sometimes is that they sort of say, okay, let's, like, for example, Carlos, you will do report section 1, Sharon, you will do report section 2, I will do report section 3. But in many cases, they stop communicating at that point and they hope that everybody will do a good job, and on last day, they will put it all together. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens the opposite way. So maybe I have not done my work, or maybe I plagiarized my section, but Carlos and Sharon don't know that yet. And so until the last day, they think that I will present a copy and paste ready section that they will just paste into one report. And that's a problem. So it's always important to communicate more throughout the project, because you may be up for some surprises at the end. Rafael, you wanted to say
invest.
something? So we have also another here, senior coach Rafael from Brazil. Rafael, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, yes. Actually, I have a point to make in that regard this team, because when I was a student, actually in the beginning of the process, we kind of align our expectations between our team to make sure what were the goals of the team. So each of member would work for like 2 hours per week. So we would know how much work each one individually would do for the team.
Yeah, that's like the social contract that we discussed a little earlier.
Yes, yes.
Virimai, you had a question, right? You raised your hand. Sorry, I keep jumping to other people. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Virimai. I'm from South Africa. I'm from a university called Cape Peninsula University of Technology. And we are joining the XCulture for the first time this year with about 109 students. So we are quite excited to be part of the program. I have probably 3 questions that I want to ask, if you can help me. The first one is, if the students fail the group project, is there an opportunity for them to redo the test? Because for our students, this project is linked to their final end of year marks. So we'd want to find out if there's an opportunity for a reassessment.
Let's do them one by one. Let me address this one. So it's not a problem. There are 2 things sort of the students can, let's call it, fail. One, the readiness test. So if the student does not get the necessary points on the readiness test, the system automatically sends a retake link, and we invite the student to take the test again. In the past, the system would send that retake link instantly. So once you complete the test, it sends you a message that says, sorry, you failed the test. You got only, let's say, 50% of the questions correctly, and we require 80. Please retake the test. And we had some students literally who took the test like 40 times. It almost seems like they randomly click on the answers until they get the right, the right answers. What we do now is there is 1 hour delay. So if you fail the test, you will get an email saying that you failed the test, please take it again, but it will be 1 hour later. And so we have some students, usually about 95% of the students pass it, no problem on the first take. Then we would have a few who fail, but they can take it again. And on the second try, almost all of them pass. In the end, out of 4,000 or so, there will be probably 8 people who tried the test and then didn't retake it or retook it and still failed it and then decided not to take it anymore. But the system will keep sending them the reminders to retake the test, until the last, minute. And so if anybody fails the test, they can take it again, and they should take it again. And as long as they try, I'm confident everybody can pass it, unless the student is not fluent in English, which wouldn't be a problem for South Africa, or maybe, I don't know, don't care at all. So usually it's a matter of effort rather than, like hard knowledge. Now, second failure can happen if the student is not working on the team hard and the team does not like the student so much that they give him or her failing peer evaluations. And as I said, in that case, we will reach out to the student once we see a problem. We will warn the student that the team is not happy with the student. We will offer help and coaching if needed. And so again, in this case, it's a matter of effort. So the student tries, it always works. I mean, the team doesn't want to lose a team member. But we will have a few, again, out of many thousands, there will be maybe like a 10 total for the whole semester who will not improve, who will not talk to the team, who will not respond to our emails. It seems like most of them just simply drop out of the course because, again, as long as they try, we will work with them. But even if that happens, even if the student is not responsive, we will not exclude them from the project altogether. We will put them on the 1-person team. And so this way they can still complete the project. They can still do the same challenge, the same deadlines, the same webinars, the same structure, the same report. They would just need to do it individually. Again, it's an extremely rare occurrence. It doesn't happen almost never, but when it does, you don't have to worry about giving that student a new assignment. They can still complete the same project. They would just have to work individually. And again, as long as they try to make it up with the team is almost always happy to get the student back. I mean, why? They don't want to lose, an additional team member. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, perfect. Then probably my last question is, You know, South Africa has quite a huge portion of the population that are very poor.
Yep.
You know, most of our students come from very impoverished backgrounds, and access to the internet is a very big challenge. And they only maybe get access to the internet and the emails when they come to campus.
Yep.
From my experience, how can we help these kind of students? Because at home, they live somewhere where there's no electricity, there's no internet access. Only when they come to the university, that's when they have internet access.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. This is a very, very good question. And actually, we are working on, so we have some partnership and some collaboration ongoing as we speak with Microsoft. And so we will see where it goes. I mean, at this time, it's only a plan, but it's possible that soon enough, we may even be able to provide some sort of technical support from the actual physical computers to maybe even some sort of like internet access to students in countries where there is no easy access to the internet. Now, it is a very common problem. I mean, again, some people may not realize it, but we do have some participants from Africa, some participants from some countries in Asia, Latin America, but even in some countries, like for example, in the United States or in Europe, there are unfortunately, especially in the United States, there are unfortunately students who may not have the internet at home. I mean, like it or not, it's a rich country, but there is a big difference. And we do have occasionally students from, you know, especially when it's at the teenage level. So we have some students who don't have Wi-Fi at home. You know, the family cannot pay for it. And so that is an issue. And some of them literally have to book time at a local library somewhere, you know, like even sometimes days in advance. It is what it is. And so the whole point again of the project is to expose students in countries where they have internet all the time to the reality that the world is not, you know, uniform. So there are parts of the world where things, you know, work differently. And so it is a challenge, but it is also an opportunity to learn first that you know, it is a reality, but also that, you know, how do you work with that? And so try to maybe distribute the workload in a way that accommodates that student. Like, for example, as Rafael was saying, that, you know, have a discussion, put it maybe on paper, discuss maybe that student will do something that requires less time being on the internet. So, you know, work with that. And I mean, I wish I had a very easy solution to that, but, you know, it will be a challenge for some teams, but, you know, it is also a very good learning opportunity. So I don't know, professors, maybe you can say something to that because you probably have heard about cases like that as well.
If I may add to this,
Yeah,
such a comment, maybe at the beginning where to get to know each other in a team, it's good to run really some synchronous event, chat,
yeah.
webinar, depending. But then I think during the project work, it can be asynchronous. You use Google Drive or some other tools, comment. It doesn't need to be all the time such a chat situation, because it's also very disturbing to students who work and because of time zones. So our students, for instance, many of them have jobs, so they can't respond at once. So that should be also agreed in a team. What's the timetable of doing things and not having all the time in such a chat mode.
And most of the teams will have an asynchronous collaboration method. So, I mean, there will be many teams that will have like Skype meetings almost every day, but most of the teams rely on email primarily, and they say, okay, here is what you'll need to work on for the next few weeks. And they will have occasional communication, but not live with the whole team. Again, we encourage to have Skype meetings or Zoom meetings all the time, but the truth is that most teams don't do it.
Yeah. There was another person who wanted to ask a question, Faniswa.
I saw that the hand was raised and then it was lowered. Let me go quickly. We have a few. So
he's already on a panelist list.
Oh, he's already. Oh, Faniswa. Yeah. I didn't realize that he was promoted. Thank you so much, Maria. I didn't realize you helped me with that. Yeah, thank you. Faniswa, you had a question? Please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Vaz. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good day to everyone that is on the panel. My name is Fanny Swanges. As you can see, I'm from South Africa. Am I clear? Do I sound clear?
Yes. Please go ahead. We can hear you very well. Yes.
Okay, first of all, I'm sorry I came in late to the meeting. I was struggling to connect as Dr. Virimai Mugobo is telling you guys that we have a problem of the poor internet connection. So I came across that now as I was trying to connect. But like my question is, are we gonna have enough time for our team members, like for us to get to know each other before we can work, whereby we will discuss the forms of communication as to how are we going to communicate and know each other, and how are we going to know who's, I know they said the guide said that there will be no team leader that will be selected. We will decide among us. So, but to the coaches, how are we going to know who is responsible maybe for our team? And also, okay, I think that was my first question. That was my first burning question, because I didn't hear from the first what was being said. So I think, and also I wanted to ask if the recording will be available, because as I said, I came in late because I was struggling to connect. Yeah, thank
The
you.
recording will be available, and you did ask a very good question about getting to know each other. So for NISWA, we actually did a series of experiments, and we looked at how teams perform when they have to start working on the project right away, no time to get to know each other. Then we gave them 1 week to get to know each other, and then they have to start on the project. Then we gave them 2 weeks to get to know each other, and then they continue with the project. Then last year we had one semester when we gave them 3 weeks. Like, you don't do anything for 3 weeks, you just get to know each other and then work on the project. And so the results of the study, which we just submitted to, about to submit to a journal, so we have 4 professors working on it, show that you need to give teams some time to get to know each other. Don't give them work right away. And so 1 week was better than 0. 2 weeks was better than 1 week, but then 3 weeks was too much. So when you spend a whole 3 weeks on getting to know each other, then it's a little too long. Then, you know, people start getting bored, and, you know, so that's why we do give 2 weeks for you to get to know. Like, all you have to do in the first 2 weeks is just basically, you know, establish contact, get to know each other. You will have 2 little quizzes where we ask you about your team members. All you need to do during this time is basically select the client, and that's it. You don't have to write anything. You don't have to do anything. It's only for meeting your team. So you'll have some time for that. And as I said, the reason we have 2 weeks is because we tested it, and that's exactly, you know, what the data showed us. I see we have a few questions in the Q&A. Some of them are technical questions. Just very
I think that we didn't answer about this coaching, that they will be not assigned coaches in advance. So,
oh yes, sorry, yes. So the coach, we tried in one semester to assign a coach to each team, and we told, you know, this is your coach. But that didn't work very well because, first of all, not all teams wanted coaches. Second, some coaches, let's call it, you know, better than others. And so some teams said, oh, we want a different coach, for example. So what we do now is we have this kind of walk-in model where you can request coaching, and then whoever is available at that time, usually I think, Carlos, you assign coaches, or is it?
Yeah, I can actually elaborate more on that. CQ's not here, but the way that the system works is that we designed it so that coaches are basically assigned cases based on the fact whether or not they have already completed a very rigorous training. So they have to take a test, and they have to complete all the different modules to be able to ensure that they know the right practices and right procedures to be able to assist the team member regardless of the case scenario that they're working with. Now, the way that we set it out is so that once the coach or the senior coach receives the case, then through the system, they start providing feedback, and then they'll respond back to the student based on that, whatever the case scenario is. So I can actually, if both of you allow me to share my screen, I can show you.
Yes, please go ahead.
The results of this week.
Yeah,
so
yeah, show us what it looks like. I'm actually curious. So I used to be doing most of the work around coaching program, but now we have a nice, wonderful team. So we have Karen Linden, one of the professors here from North Carolina, and then Carlos, Rafael, Maria, Anna. So there are like 5 people working. So they're doing some phenomenal things. And honestly, now I kind of lost track of all the developments. So show us what you guys do. Ezekiel?
I'm still not able to share.
Oh, sorry. I think we need to designate you as a co-host. Just a second. Here we go. Should be working now.
Okay. All right, give me a second. So I will actually just show you the sheet for this week. So as you guys can see, this is just all the information, and this is thankfully provided by Sekio, one of our admins, and he's been pretty proactive to be able to keep the stats on all the different cases, time for acknowledgement, as well as how many coaches are getting responses, and then what are these responses about. So you guys can see the status of the case, most of them being acknowledged. If there's any new cases that are on the system, that's what they will show as, if they have been acknowledged or they're still in progress trying to respond to the person requesting the assistance.
Yeah,
now,
I think the students don't need to have all of the kind of, mathematics behind it, but the point here is that when you ask for help, a coach will be selected for you depending on what kind of request you have and, whose skills are the best match for that specific problem, right?
And just to answer most of the responses that we had, at least for the early track, yes, they've been actually just coaching requests for whether the report submission is up to standards or maybe they should make any additions or changes to it. But for the most part, like I said, like Bas, you have said, it's a walk-in model. So you're going to be working with different coaches when you make a request, but you can also contact the coach in the past regarding the same case in case it hasn't been resolved. But what we suggest is to always use the system. That way we can keep track of what problems are being faced. And everybody, at least for the ones they have already completed the XCulture M testing and they are now on the system, are very proactive and will respond within a day or two. So.
Yep.
Yeah, can I add a bit? Because my status is quite a bit confusing because this time I'm coach, I'm a head coach, and I'm a professor, newcomer professor, and I also have.
And that's exactly what we want. So we want students to kind of grow with us. We do have several actually now who started as a student, then they moved on to the graduate school, then they applied to the coaching program, then they became the head coaches. And then at some point they become teachers and professors, and so they become our colleagues. And so we've had several. That's precisely what we want. So yes, Maria, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so and I heard that Fanisha probably also was confused about this communication, how they will start. And what I explained to my students as well is that first of all, you will receive email with a list of other participants, your team members' emails, and this is the first step, that you will contact them by email, and then you decide what tools you will use, how you will communicate, how often, and it's your team decision. And what about my question that seems same as Sema has? We can't really check the status of our students about this readiness test. This Dropbox file that is shared, it seems doesn't be updated or doesn't work. There is no information about, for example, my students are not added to that. But this is, I send an email, so this could be checked that we.
Let me check there, because we always, the professors are informed on a weekly basis about the performance of each of their students. So let me check what's going on there. But professors will be getting very regular updates.
And for students, it's important to know that all that you are doing, we as a professors, we will know how you are.
No question about that, of course, yeah. There is one very interesting question that I need to address here. So at the end of the project, will there be a presentation or not? And so, just a second, that's probably Dr. B. So there is a question, will there be a presentation at the end of the semester or not? Let me just send a quick email to Dr. B, so she wants to join us as well, one of our professors who is in charge of the non-student population. So I sent it to her. So presentations, the answer is yes and no. So in the perfect world, we would like every student, every team to do a presentation of their work to the client. The challenge is that we have over 1,000 teams. And so even if we gave each team only 10 minutes and, and presented nonstop, it would be like 4 days of presentations, if we don't take breaks for sleep and for, for eating. So what we do instead is the following. For the university students, we strongly encourage the professors to organize presentations at their campuses, universities, online, whichever way they do it. So this way the students will present at least to the rest of the class. For the non-university students, for the academy students, we try to have presentations for all of the teams. It's a very small number of the teams compared to the rest of the group. And so we'll try to have those presentations done by all of the teams to a panel of coaches and professors. But one thing we do ask every single team to do, and this is optional, but we ask them all to do it, is to record a presentation and send us the recording. So for example, last semester out of 1,000 teams, what about 300-400 teams chose to do that presentation, maybe even more. And so thank you so much. I believe Rafael, if I remember correctly, was in charge of this. So he had a team of coaches who watched those presentations, provided some feedback, but also then selected the best ones. And then we had a live presentation of those teams. We invited the company representatives, we invited some professors, we invited some coaches, and we did that kind of live big presentation for the teams whose recordings were kind of deemed the best of the best. Now, as I said, again, ideally, we would like each team to do a live presentation to their client. But again, the problem is that it's not even that there are over 1,000 teams total. The problem is that on average, each client has 100+ teams working on the challenge. In fact, we will have some clients that will have 200 or even 300 teams. And so there is really no physical way it can be done so that each CEO watches the presentations of each team that worked on that challenge. So there will be a chance to submit the recorded presentation. Hopefully the professors will organize the presentations at their universities. For the younger participants, it's a small group. We will probably have presentations for all teams. And then we will have one big final round of presentations by the best teams based on those preliminary recordings that we will review. Did you had a comment, please?
I have a question. So I understand there are so many reports for each company. So, but is there some system or to figure out the best ideas from all reports about the same company, make such a really short list of ideas, and then maybe to ask the company to respond or range these ideas, what they really consider to be valuable. It would be very good feedback. And I understand maybe it can't be done only by company representative. It should be such a multi-level decision making.
Carlos and Rafael are probably smiling. So the truth is that when the company receives the reports, we are talking about like this much paper.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, let's say 200 reports, that's like, several thousand pages of paper. And so what we do now is we hire people, like Carlos has done it a couple of times, Rafael has done it a couple of times, and we prepare what we call an executive summary for that company.
Yes, yeah.
So they, like Carlos, it took you like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to read all those reports?
Well, it took me about a month and a half to go over all the reports just from like Calgary, and that was the best report. So we're talking about like 50 reports, 60 reports that I went over. So the process that
summarized all of the main ideas, all of the most interesting ideas, and then we sent that summary to the company. And then the company this way can still read everything, or at least get some sort of a summary. And then we do ask for feedback. But again, usually they give generic feedback. Like for example, last semester, we had one company.
If there could be at the end some 2-pager, let's say, range list of 10 most or 20 most useful ideas or points, then it would be very valuable to give this feedback back to teams.
And usually we try to do that. Again, some companies take it more seriously. Like we had, for example, Felix of the Get Out events from Singapore. Last year, he actually organized his own webinar where he went through the reports that he read and provided feedback. So he said, I cannot, comment on each one, but at least let me give you some general feedback, things that I did like, things that I didn't like. So he took it very seriously. We had a couple of companies that did that. But then again, there are some companies, especially the bigger ones, that just simply, the CEOs are too busy and they just say, okay, thank you so much. We will read it and we'll give you some, like very generic feedback. So we try to get as much out of the companies as possible, but the reality is such that, again, they are busy. And so we'll have to see, if we will be able to get, a very detailed feedback. All right, so let's see if we have any other unanswered questions and comments. Oh, my Facebook is listening. So any other comments, professors? And let me look through the questions if there is anything that we didn't touch upon, because I see we have some repetitive questions.
Hi, yeah, this is Seema from Florida International University.
Go ahead, Seema.
I just had a couple of questions. So one was that we would get our students' scores, that worksheet would be updated, hopefully in the next few days. The second one was when the students submit their reports and they get feedback on those reports will be shared with us, or that feedback will be shared with us. right? So is that something that's just going to happen through the Dropbox as well, in terms of, so if I have 30 students in my class, I would get 30 different feedback, one for each student. Is that correct?
Let me go step by step. This is a very good question, and this is primarily for professors, but also the students might be interested in that as well. So for the early track, so we haven't started the late track yet. So, but for the early track, here's how it works. So each week, the professors will receive two things. One, there will be an email, like for example, this is what I sent out to the early track professors on September the 30th. So basically, you know, this week's feedback. So there will be a one-page summary like this of the main things that are happening this week. So you will have like a summary if you don't want to read the whole thing, but then for each of the points, you get a little bit more. So you have a link to all of the latest records, and then you have a little bit, you know, review of what to pay attention to. There is some statistics like the average peer evaluations. So in the early track, out of 2,000 students, 10 were with peer evaluations below 2, and so we send them the warnings. This is the confidence level, motivation, enjoyment, clarity. So this is what we track each week. This is the peer evaluations distribution for that week. Again, it's a very typical distribution. So as you see, the vast majority of the students are doing very well. So almost all of them are above okay, and almost all of them are basically between good and excellent. So almost all students do well. But then we have a few students here, you know, below 2. So this is a very, very typical distribution. That's what we will see pretty much every week. And then a few words on.
Sorry, so I love the comparative. This is wonderful, but would I get this information about my students?
Yes,
like,
and so
you know, all of that specifics?
Exactly, and here in this email, you have the link to the record. So when you click on it, it takes you, let me show you here, takes you to this same file that I share here in my right. So the second file is the performance file. So this is what you will get every single week. And so here you will have all full performance on your students up to date. So it is the entire list. So you can see, like, for example, Adrian Perez Guarda, so the professor from a Mexican university here. And so for each of the student, from the kind of basic metadata, like, for example, when the student received the welcome letter, when the student was placed on the team, what is the team number, the team size, all of that, you know, where the student comes from. And then, you know, first you will get the readiness test scores. So this student completed the readiness test on August the 30th with a score of 88. English was 80. Then first week, this is what the student reported, you know, confidence 100%, motivation 100%, enjoyment 100%, clarity in the first week was 81%. And then open-ended comments, the student said, everything is going well with the project and my team. Then next week, meet and greet, again, the student was very happy, and here are some of the comments the student left. And so on and so on and so on, moving week by week, all the way by now they're in week 6. So this is what they did. So these are the peer evaluations the student is getting. The self-evaluations were as such, and the peer evaluations were, you know, this here. And then the student is working on the company, Truffle and Wine Company Australia. And here are some of the comments of this student. And so in this file, you will get it every single week. As I always say, red is bad. So if there is something in red, that means there is a problem. Like, for example,
no, this is great. Thank you. I'm wondering, would we get the feedback on their report? So let's say I have student John, and John submitted a report.
So you will get the actual submissions if you want to look at them. Although I will be honest with you, my feel is that the vast majority of the professors don't have the time to read them. It's a lot of, like, each week you get a bunch of submissions. And we will not provide feedback on each submission because we have thousands of students and over 1,000 teams. I mean, it's humanly impossible, like literally just too much work to read 1,000 submissions each week and provide feedback on each of them. So what we will do is we will provide feedback on the final submission. So that we will do. Okay. And then for the students, as I said, they will get feedback as I showed. So there is a feedback provided on the submissions from the last semester.
Yes.
So get to each company. So if they want feedback, they can read this. If they want individual feedback, they can request it from the coaches, and then one of the coaches or 2 coaches will look at that individual submission and send a page or whatever the, you know, the number will be. But no, it's physically impossible for us to provide feedback on each submission each week, just because there is, like, just the sheer volume. I mean, we are talking about thousands and thousands of pages, and obviously we don't have the resources to do that.
Sure, but we will get the feedback on the final report then.
Of course, yeah. So now, professors, we do hope that you will provide some feedback to your students.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
You will get obviously the final reports. You will get the report drafts. You will get the weekly submissions. And again, I understand that you don't, you're not looking forward to grading a bunch of submissions every single week. But some professors, especially if you have a smaller class, maybe you will have time to take a quick look and maybe share some feedback with your students. And if you do, that would help. But then again, I honestly don't do it with my students. I tend to have a large class, sometimes up to 100 students. And again, I just simply, I can't. And so I tell my students, if you really need feedback, the coaches will help you. But I mean, I cannot grade a bunch of submissions every single week. It's just too much work. So again, if you happen to have a smaller class, it will be more manageable. But if you have a large class, we totally understand if you don't have time for that. What I do with my students at the beginning of each lecture, I ask them to share their experiences with me. And so we devoted 15, 20 minutes kind of, checking where they stand, if everything's fine, maybe asking some questions, answers that I can do. So that's something that I do have time for. And again, I encourage you to do it. But more, again, realistically, probably it will be impossible just because it takes too much time with this, this amount of work.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, anything else? Maria, maybe if you can help me here with the questions. I see we have quite a few. I don't have time to read all of them. So any other questions, professors, that you would like to either ask or maybe address? And meanwhile, let us take a look at the questions the students posted in the chat.
Okay, I have questions.
I would like to find out when the results of the readiness test are now available.
So the students get them instantly. So when the students take the test, they get an email instantly telling them if they passed, or if they didn't pass, they get that also right away, and then they can retake it an hour later. And let me check. So now that you started asking about that, I actually realized I may have not sent anything to the professors yet. So we make sure to communicate with the students, but probably not with the professors because the project hasn't quite started. So let me send you the results literally right after this meeting. So I do have the file, obviously everything's, because we communicate with the students all the time. So this way you will know if any of your students need any reminders or any help. Although again, our system automatically sends the reminders to those students who have not completed it. And from what I see, almost all students are ready now. So we have still a few who still need to do the test, but the vast majority are done and ready to be placed on teams.
Bas, if we can go over the questions, there's a question that says in this semester's resource page, there will be 12 companies and the projects are displayed there. Are all the companies or projects, can they be selected in the future? And would it be possible to select multiple teams for the same project or company?
Good question. So we do have 12 companies, and as I said, I will add 2 more. And so the teams can choose any company they want. Sometimes the students ask, can I choose 2 clients? And so the answer is, I mean, you can, I don't mind, but I mean, do you really want to work on the two projects at the same time? I mean, even if you are such a hardworking student, I bet your team will say, no, let's work on one. But you can change your client anytime you want. So we don't care about that. Each week we will ask you what your client organization is. And if you decide to change it, you can. You probably will not, because once you choose one and start working on it, you don't want to kind of start from scratch working on a new one. But if, let's say, you have a brilliant idea for a different challenge and you decide to change, or for some reason you don't like your company anymore, you can change. We don't, there is no requirement. I will tell you this though, we usually, when we select the winners, we usually select the best company, the best team in each company category, meaning that there will be, when you have 1,000 teams, you cannot select one winner. I mean, it's objectively impossible to say that this was the best team and the other 999 were not the best. So we always have sort of multiple winners. And what we do is we try to select the best report for each company. And that's where, by the way, going back to T's question about feedback, that's where we try to engage the companies and ask them, can you take a look at least at the highest scored reports and tell us which one you like most and why? And so there will be, if there are 14 companies, that means there will be 14 teams that will win the competition. And so your chances of winning are higher when you choose a less popular company. And what I will do in the first email that will go out the first week, I will tell you which companies were most popular in the early track. Chances are they will be also more popular in the late track, and your team will have a better chance of winning if you choose the least popular. Now, my interest here is that I want a balanced distribution. I don't want to have like 500 teams working on one challenge and nobody working on another. So sort of that's my way to nudge you to select less popular companies. But it is also in your team's interest to select less popular companies. So, and I'll give you that statistics, students, if you're watching, so that you know which ones are, kind of not as popular. Maybe you should choose them. Although in the early track, it was a pretty even distribution. So there were some more popular, some less popular, but every company had a lot of teams, and then some had a little bit more, but there was none that kind of cannibalized half of all the teams. So it seems to be more or less evenly distributed this time.
There is another question regarding plagiarism. So say team members' work was identified for plagiarism during the initial submission, and it was not properly fixed, or they continued to plagiarize during their edit. What is the consequence to the rest of the team?
Professors, anyone wants to address this question? So let's say you have a student. Your student is a good student, did everything honestly, everything's fine, but another team member on that team plagiarized a few pages, and your student comes to you 1 week before the deadline or 3 days before the deadline and says, I have this student, John Smith from the United States, who is very dishonest. So he plagiarized his section, and I don't want to redo his section, but he wouldn't want to redo it either. So he says his English is not good, and he found good answers online. Why should I write it myself when I found good text online? What should I do? So what would be your answer, professors, to a student to a request like this? Anyone? Because it's very typical, not very typical, but we will have probably like 40 teams out of 1,000 where there will be some plagiarism detected based on the report draft. And your students will probably say, I should not be held responsible because it's somebody else on my team who plagiarized. I don't have time for that. So what would be your response? Sharon.
I had this situation 2 times ago, and one student highlighted to me that there was a huge section that was copied and pasted by another student. I couldn't allow that to happen because the report that our student would submit is worth 50% of their grade, and I couldn't allow that for their own grade. I talked to them about talking to the student and explaining what plagiarism was all about and the importance of referencing, and saying to them, can you offer to help him rewrite it and actually reference it as well? He did go away and try and do that, and it did come back a bit better. I also gave other feedback on it, which his team didn't really take on board, and it actually resulted in me scoring that student quite a poor grade at the end. He did pass, and he was very disappointed. But what was really a learning curve for that student is he said to me, what I've learned most is that I need to improve my communication and influencing skills and coaching skills to be able to get my team to the standards where I want that team to be. So I put the onus back on the student to coach the person who was actually plagiarizing.
Yeah. That's a very good answer. That's what I would tell my students, because again, we share that information with the professors. And so professors, you're sort of free to choose how you want to handle that. In the ideal world, obviously, we want you to take plagiarism extremely seriously. And so if there is anybody on either in your class who plagiarized, or maybe somebody on the team, we want you to communicate how problematic that is, and so that the team needs to do something about that. Either make the student to redo that part of the work, of the assignment, or maybe as a team come together and help that student and do something about it. But I mean, there is really not much we at XCulture can do. Here I can show you what the statistics look like for the last semester. So these are the submissions we got. And as you can see, we didn't really have many problems. So out of almost 1,000 teams, so if you look at the statistics, almost all of the teams are in green. So meaning that, like virtually nobody plagiarizes. So there is like 0% to a few percent of the report that is copied and pasted. And usually up to 15 to 20% is considered okay, meaning that those would be legitimate quotes. Those would be, maybe some extracts properly cited. So we had 2 teams last semester that were kind of in the yellow, not quite red, but in the yellow. So if I open one of them, for example, team 120, and this is what the team saw as well. So they see that a week before the submission, as well as, so they have, oh, I don't need the review, so they changed something here. So let me, I'm sorry about that. So apparently they have new functions and they want me to look at them. Okay, I got it. Let's get started. So this is what the report looks like for that team. So 33% copied and pasted, 18% copied and pasted from University of North Carolina, Greensboro. So they copied it from something that was submitted to my university. But anyway, when they go through the report, they see specifically which sections have been copied and pasted. And some of this is like, submission deadline. So I'm not sure why it's even highlighted. So it seems like it's some metadata that, the program found somewhere else. But some sections may be a little bit more, let me see if I can find something that is more kind of larger. So if I go to, yeah, this is kind of a strange one. So it's a lot of little things and I'm not even sure if they include their own. It almost, like this one looks very strange. It looks as if they included their own submission as part of the report. Let's take a look at this one. So team 211. So 32% plagiarism. So 8% was copied from campaign drive, whatever that is. And as you can see, like a whole paragraph is copied here, and then a whole paragraph is copied here. So this is definitely a problem. And so what we do is obviously we would not consider this team for winning the competition, but there is nothing else we can do. So we can share this information with the professors, which we do. We obviously sent an email to the team itself saying that, guys, this is a problem. But other than that, there is really not much we can do, and hopefully it will not happen again. But as you can see, this particular team copied literally a couple of pages here. So the good news again is that when we look at the total results, it's a very rare occasion. So in most of the cases, most of the teams have very good statistics. It does not indicate any problem, and so we don't really have many cases where it's a case of real, honest, big plagiarism. So, but again, we will share that statistics with the team. We will share that statistics with the professors, and then it's up to you professors to decide how you're going to handle it. I know some professors say that it's a failing grade automatically for the team. Others say, oh, well, big deal. So what can I do? So I usually try to take it very seriously, and definitely it would be reflected in the grade if it was, a team that my student was part of. And I would tell my student that, no, you knew about that. You had a chance to check about it, and you didn't do anything about this, not good, not cool. So definitely some penalty here. But again, it's a very tricky issue. All right, anything else? Any other questions that we need to address before we go?
Question?
Yeah.
Question,
go ahead.
Lydia wanted to ask something.
Yeah. Could you also share the rubric to evaluate all the report, please?
Yes, so this is a very good question. So let me show you what you as professors will get when the time comes for evaluation. So let's go to the last semester. So let me just go to 21. So for the final reports, this is what the professors will get. So let's go to 2B, final reports. Yeah. So you will have all of the reports by team. So you can open each of them, like team 55, for example. This is what the report looked like. You can see them all, obviously. This is a good report, so nice page. So they worked on get out events. So you get all that information. So you have the full collection here, all of the teams. But then you have a couple of things here that you need to read before. One, you have a full collection of the original challenges. So we had 15 companies, I believe, last semester, and you can look at all of those challenges. So what exactly each company needed. Then you also have the Turnitin statistics. So you have the reports, the information on plagiarism on each report. But then importantly, you have the evaluation rubrics, and that would be, so this is the file that shows you which reports you need to evaluate as a professor. So for example, Professor Goktan had a total of 16 students, and they were on these teams. And so this way he knows which of the reports were submitted by the teams that his students were members of. But then the evaluation rubrics would be right here. So this is the file that we use where we ask you to record your evaluation of the report. So you would say, for example, I evaluate a report from team 1. My name is Vastaras. The company was, for example, Get Out Events, and they had 25 pages. And then I give them 6 for the executive summary, 7 for market analysis, 5 for whatever it is, and so on and so on and so on. And then I provide my feedback, maybe a few sentences, what I think about that report. The evaluation rubrics are here. So for each of the questions we have, like for example, for executive summary. So we recommend that you give them 7 when the executive summary sort of, meets these standards. You give them 4 when they meet these standards, and you give them 1 when they meet these standards, and then obviously everything in between. So 5 or 6 if it's kind of more than this, but not quite this. And then when it comes to market analysis, again, this is what's normally required, and then all the way until we have the recommended evaluations. Right here, block 1. So 7 for this, 4 for this, 1 for this. Importantly, this is very important. If we go to the challenges, the students actually have the rubrics right in the challenge itself. So, and in fact, professors can see that as well. So when they get to the actual specific questions, we are very honest about how we're going to evaluate them and what we will recommend the professors give for the evaluations. So when you get to the actual, like for example, market analysis, so right here, we tell the students how it will be evaluated. You will get 7 when your market analysis is clear and concise list of clients, strengths and weaknesses, threats and opportunities, a review of the market, like everything, is included here. You will get, less than that, like for example, 4, if you provide a good analysis and recommendations, but some elements are not strongly supported, some parts are irrelevant or redundant. And you will get 1 if it's impossible to figure out what your recommendation is, what kind of market analysis you did. So basically when everything's bad. And so the students can even sort of try to evaluate their own work using the rubrics because they're right here. So they literally see what the professors will be using to decide what kind of numbers they will assign for each of the sections. So everything is transparent, everything is right here, and the students can see it as well.
Okay, there is one other question. Will the weekly report be scored as individual or as a group?
Not scored at all. So the individual weekly submissions, we will provide some generic feedback, but they will not be evaluated. And as I said, the reason for that is we simply don't have the manpower. I mean, if you have 1,000 submissions each week, even if you spend, 10 minutes per each, we are talking about, like a week of time for one person or, a whole day for several people. We cannot ask our professors to do it. It's just too much work, and we do not have the financial resources to hire professionals to evaluate those reports. So the weekly submissions, we will look at them, we will share them with the professors. The professors, hopefully, we will look at them, and if they see a problem, they will hopefully reach out to the students and offer help. But we will not be grading them, we will not be providing numbers. There were a couple of semesters ago, Carlos may remember, I think we were actually providing some numbers each week, right? So, but that was a lot of work, or maybe it was Tim still in charge of the coaching program.
It was initially after Tim left, we tried that for a couple semesters, but we just realized it was just too much.
Yeah, I mean, it does take, even when you assign all 50 coaches to each read like 50 submissions and give some sort of, number and maybe a few words of feedback, realistically, it takes a lot of time. And the problem is that, again, some coaches may also be a little bit late. And so by the time we get those scores, it's almost too late because by that time the team moved on, they're working on the next section, and sometimes it's close to the end of the project. So we decided not to do it anymore because it was just too much work, and it was usually still too much time. By the time it's available, it's irrelevant already.
So even the feedback itself, it was very generalized. So we realized, why don't we just give already a generalized copy of the previous semester and then just have them look at that, because pretty much the same things, the same problems, same mistakes that they will cover.
Yeah.
Yes, and scores what you will have as a student is from your peers. So it's most important scores that you will have each week.
Yeah, so each student gets peer evaluations, and they will see those peer evaluations every single week. So while we will not evaluate your work per se, you will be evaluated by your team as far as your effort, as far as your leadership skills, as far as your friendliness and collegiality. So that we will share again with each student as well as with each professor each week. So you will have those evaluations.
So no evaluation from a professors or XCulture, but from your team members. Each week you will be evaluated, and you will have to evaluate all other team members.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then there was.
So I just realized we've been going on for almost 2 hours now. So
yes, we should finalize. There was one question regarding the plagiarism as well. Do they have a basic understanding of of avoiding plagiarism? So
that's a good question. And again, as I showed you on that file with the webinars, we actually did several webinars on plagiarism specifically, and I did include the recording, the link to the recording of the one that was most informative. So there was one webinar where we had a few professors who talked about, what is plagiarism, why it's a problem, how to avoid it, how to properly cite your sources. So the students and professors, if you need to, you can watch that recording. It's available in the list of the webinars. And I'm not sure if the coaches are planning to do another one, but maybe we can and should do another one on specifically plagiarism, because it is kind of a big issue. And so not everybody sort of understands what plagiarism is and how to properly cite sources, so that if you use or refer to work of others, it doesn't look like you stole their ideas, but you properly acknowledge that it is, work of others. So maybe we'll do another one, but there is a recording of the one from the last semester.
But I would engage, I would invite students to discuss this topic in your team, to be sure that you understand it's that you don't have this different understanding between your team members.
Yeah, there is also one question about language differences. And so to that, I will say that at the beginning of each semester, we do ask students what they expect to be the challenges of working with people from other cultures. And at the beginning of the semester, usually language differences are scored very high. So everybody expects that to be a problem. Then we ask exactly the same question at the end, and we ask, what was the problem? To what extent was a problem for your team to deal with the language differences, time zone differences, cultural differences, and so on and so on. And in the end, language is not even in top 10. Like, it seems like that's not a problem. I mean, everybody seems to be fluent enough. And even those who are not very fluent in English, teams can easily work around it. The bigger problem that always turns out to be a problem that students did not anticipate is that somebody is not working hard enough. That sometimes happens. The bigger problem is that sometimes there would be some like national holidays in some countries, and the students didn't tell that they will be away for a week because it's a month of something. And so they just basically took a holiday and didn't tell the team. So kind of more technical and more personal issues tend to be a much bigger issue than the cultural differences or time zone differences or language differences. So even though we expect them to be problems, but usually they turn out to be not so much. So language is not something to be worried about. Usually it's not. There will be some team members who will not be able to write without grammar errors, but the smart way to deal with that is to ask them to work on something else, maybe do more research, or maybe do some, marketing ideas instead of trying to do the write-up. And if you have a native speaker on the team, and most teams will have at least one student from the United States, maybe assign that student to do the final copy editing. So maybe, kind of relieve that student of work, related to other tasks, but ask that student to do a lot of copy editing at the end, because some of the team members may not be, fluent in English. So, and that's what most of the team, normally do anyway.
Yes, there is a last question about the project reports. Will we get some of these past project reports before?
Actually, you can see the submissions, the winning submissions from the last year. So if you go to the XCulture website, here you can see winners. And so all the way going back to the beginning of time to 2010, I believe, you can literally look at the best teams and best reports from every semester. So if you click here, best teams, so we have the winning teams. Usually there would be, as I said, like one, sometimes two teams per company. And then we always select the best professors as well. But here, like, for example, in this semester, out of over 1,000 teams, 27 teams were selected as the best teams. So we had 1,178 teams, and of those we selected 27 as the winners. And so there is a description of how we selected them, and there is, the whole process. But you can click here and you can see the actual winning reports from the last, from that team. So you can literally see 27 reports that won the competition. And you can do the same thing for every semester. So you can go, so this one I opened, it was 22, but you can go to any, like, like for example, last semester, so 2021. So the semester that ended a few months ago. So same thing. So if you look at the list of the best teams, you will see the description, the motivations, how we selected them. So we had so many students, so many teams, and we selected 28 teams that were, designated as winners. And again, you can look at those reports. And the good thing is that in the last semester, out of 14 companies, I think 8 or 9 were the same companies that we have this semester. So you will even be able to see what were the best reports for the companies that maybe you're working on this semester. So like, for example, this is a winning report for a company called Matchplat. They are participating again this semester. It's a financial company out of London. And so you can look at what a winning report look like, and you can build upon it and maybe develop something better. So obviously you cannot copy and paste it. We will know about that. We will check for that. But you can look at some of the ideas and maybe develop and build upon them and come up with something even better. So that is all available, obviously. And for professors, if you want to see the full collection of all the thousands, again, we will be happy to share with you those.
Can students refer to previous reports if they use some specific data or some sentence or something?
That's a good question. I suppose, why not? Again, so we haven't had many plagiarism issues, as I said in the past. There will be always 1 or 2 teams that sort of kind of push it a little bit too much into the yellow territory. Sometimes we may even have 1 team that has like all in red, but that happens very, very rarely. Like we've had maybe in the whole, 10 years, maybe like 5 teams like that. But I suppose some teams can see the prior, reports from the last semester. And in fact, if you Google XCulture reports, you will even find kind of like third-party depositories. I don't know who compiles them, how they do it, why they do it, but you can find, like, it seems like students just share them. And so, as I said, I don't mind if students see reports from the last semesters. In fact, I encourage you to read reports from the last semesters so that you can build upon those ideas. You can try to do it better. So you don't have to reinvent the bicycle. You can, make it better. How many teams will do it? I don't know. But if you do it, and if you borrow some of the ideas, or if you find some interesting thoughts that you want to quote, I suppose, yes, you can quote it as a report submitted to XCulture before, acknowledge that it's not your idea, it's somebody else's, and then explain what new ideas you contribute beyond that. Again, it doesn't look like most teams do it. And when they do it, it seems like they don't copy and paste. Maybe they just, think about it, but don't really use it. But yeah, if you use somebody else's work, just properly acknowledge the authorship, and yeah, why not? All right, I suggest we stop here because we have another coaching webinar in 3 minutes. And thank you so much, professors, for staying with us here for the whole 2 hours. Thank you so much. And yeah, it will be a good semester.
A wonderful weekend, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.